believe that there are big realms of good and evil, and they're slugging it out.
What does the evil side want?
Oh, it wants you. It wants you. People are capable of horrors, of atrocities. We're also capable of wonderful things, of good things. And we have the choice.
Did you know who he was?
Yes, I knew him. I was introduced to him on my 31st birthday by my ex-boyfriend, Flavio. He was always front and center at Victoria's Secret shows.
The whole situation, so when you read it, it's a pretty convincing document. And you're right, nobody sued him for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty scary.
Well, not only did they not sue him, their response is to try to ignore it. They don't want to debate him on it. They don't want to do anything.
No.
They want to just ignore it and hope it goes away. But it doesn't go away. And the more people talk about it, the more people read it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do read it and you go, if this is true, what the is going on? And how is that monster still loose?
Mel Gibson is finally dropping names of these A-list Hollywood celebs who were part of Jeffrey Epstein's network and participated in his alleged crimes. In February 2026, Attorney General Pam Bondi submitted a list to Congress that contained over 300 names. Jay-Z was apparently on that list. His name also appeared in Epstein's Black Book, which was basically a contact list. He was even mentioned in documents found during searches of Epstein's properties. And here's the interesting part. The official flight manifests that have been released show that he was allegedly a passenger on the Lolita Express. Unlike some other celebrities, Jay-Z doesn't appear in the logs for trips to Little St. James, New Mexico, or Palm Beach. So there's no evidence he ever visited Epstein's properties. But how did his name end up in the files in the first place? The theory floating around suggests it's connected to an older Beyonce interview that Mel Gibson, along with Beyonce's fan base, consider as hidden cries for help.
Why did God give me this life? Sometimes it's overwhelming. Why did God give me my talent, my gift, my family? But I know you're not supposed to question God. So I'm grateful for the life He's given me. I'm so grateful. I'm alive and I'm living a dream.
And look, this connects to a much bigger conversation that's been happening for years. People have talked about Beyonce and Jay-Z's marriage for a while. Some fans think she has been groomed since she was 16 when they first met. Others think she's trapped and is being used for clout and money. But Mel Gibson frames this whole situation as full-on Illuminati mind control stuff, which is what Maya has allegedly exposed a long time ago.
Even when I met Jay-Z and I signed to Rock Nation, the first thing he told me to do is get plastic surgery. I'm not insecure because I would have got plastic surgery. So their argument of Maya's fucking insecure, that's why she needs to fucking massage her ego, fails. Fails because you turn around and ask them, what women do you know who hasn't had plastic surgery around you? All of them have.
Another name that appeared in the Epstein files is Naomi Campbell. When it comes to Naomi Campbell and her connection to Jeffrey Epstein, we're not just dealing with speculation and theories. There's actually documented evidence here. And Naomi's name appears on multiple verified flight records from the early 2000s.
How many people do you think you have rubbed shoulders with, as the Mail on Sunday put it?
I've rubbed shoulders with hundreds of thousands of people.
The October 2002 manifest doesn't just list Naomi. It also lists Ghislaine Maxwell and former President Bill Clinton.
We saw photographs of Bill Clinton with Michael Jackson. Apparently there's one of him swimming with Ghislaine Maxwell.
As per Gibson, Naomi was in contact with both Epstein and Maxwell during a period when they were actively recruiting young women under the guise of modeling opportunities. This isn't just a rumor. This is what the receipts actually show.
There's bigger things at play here. And institutions that purport to touch on the divine are necessarily going to be affected by that slugfest that's going on between good and evil.
Right.
And
sometimes good gives up ground.
Yeah, and maybe not on purpose. You know,
Yeah.
maybe there's some deception involved or self-deception.
Right. Co-opted.
Like every morning when I wake up, I actually pray that I don't deceive myself.
In her 2016 deposition, Virginia Giuffre testified she met Naomi Campbell at several locations, including a birthday party on a yacht in Saint-Tropez in the south of France. She described Naomi as a friend of Ghislaine's and alleged that Naomi treated her with hostility during their encounters. And here's where things get even more messy. Images that were recovered during investigations appear to verify the presence of Naomi on a yacht with Maxwell in Virginia. But perhaps the most shocking part involves how Epstein allegedly used his connection to Naomi. Witnesses testified that Epstein would mention his friendship with Naomi and his connections to Leslie Wexner, the CEO of Victoria's Secret, to convince aspiring models that he could launch their careers. This was a major theme in his grooming process. He would use celebrity connections as a form of currency, a way to make himself seem genuine. By claiming to be friends with supermodel Naomi Campbell, he could convince young women that he had the power to make their modeling dreams come true.
I've always said that I'm not a saint, that I am a work in progress, but I will not be held hostage by my past.
According to Mel, Epstein wasn't just some random wealthy guy. He was building this entire ecosystem of influence and access. Having someone like Naomi Campbell in his social circle, even if it was just casual association, gave him credibility that he could exploit. And that's exactly what he did when he met the Microsoft founder.
It's factually true that I was only at dinners. I never went to the island. I never met any women. And so, the more that comes out, the more clear it'll be that although the time was a mistake, it had nothing to do with that kind of behavior.
Bill Gates' connection to Epstein goes beyond just social events. This is about money, power, and what an alleged extortion attempt. Let's start with the timeline. Bill Gates first met Epstein in 2011. This was approximately 3 years after Epstein's initial conviction in Florida. So we're not talking about a time when Epstein was operating freely and everyone thought he was some kind of businessman. By 2011, the guy had already been convicted of serious crimes. Yet somehow, Bill Gates still decided to meet with him.
It's beyond heartbreaking, right? I remember being those ages those girls were. I remember my daughters being those ages, right? So for me, it's personally hard whenever those details come up, right? Because brings back memories of some very, very painful times in my marriage, but I have moved on from that. So whatever questions remain there of what I can't even begin to know all of it, those questions are for those people and for even my ex-husband. They need to answer to those things, not me.
The files also contain info that Bill Gates had an affair with a Russian girl named Mila Antonova in 2010 when she was in her 20s. She was later introduced to Epstein as Mila was seeking funding for a bridge-related startup. Although Epstein did not invest in her business, he did pay for her to attend a software coding school in 2014. Reports show that in 2017, after Gates refused to participate in the donor-advised fund, Epstein emailed Gates demanding reimbursement for Antonova's tuition costs. He warned him, saying he would expose his affair if Gates did not maintain their professional ties.
Late offender, tell us what we've found.
Well, Mark, in that massive Epstein file dump released by the Department of Justice, 2 emails written to Jeffrey Epstein from Epstein himself mentioned the Microsoft founder, Bill Gates. Now, it's unclear if these emails were ever sent to Gates themselves.
Now, there's also these 2 emails drafted by Epstein to himself on July 18th, 2013, which contain some pretty serious details against Bill Gates. These drafts were written from the perspective of an employee named Boris, who was allegedly resigning due to morally inappropriate activities. In these drafts, Epstein claimed that Gates had been physical with different Russian girls. He also contracted a STI and sought illicit substances like Adderall for bridge tournaments.
It was also widely reported that Bill had a friendship or business or some kind of contact with Jeffrey Epstein and that you were not. That was very upsetting to you. Did that play a role in the divorce at all in this process?
Yeah, as I said, it's not one thing, it was many things. But I did not like that he'd had meetings with Jeffrey Epstein, no.
Leonardo DiCaprio and Cate Blanchett's inclusion in the Epstein files comes from the 2016 deposition of Johanna Sjoberg, which was unsealed in January 2024. During her deposition, she was asked by attorneys if she had ever met Leonardo DiCaprio or Cate Blanchett while she was with Epstein. In her reply, she explained that while she was performing massages for Epstein, he would frequently be on the phone and would later claim he was speaking to these actors. Can you imagine that? You're a young woman being recruited into Epstein's world, and he's constantly dropping these huge names to impress you. Sjoberg described this behavior as name-dropping and flimsy braggadocio. She said it was clearly intended to impress her and other young women. He wanted them to think he was connected to the famous people in the world. By claiming to be on a first-name basis with A-list actors like DiCaprio, Blanchett, Bruce Willis, and Cameron Diaz, he created this environment where he appeared untouchable and globally connected. He was building this image of himself as someone who moved in the highest celebrity circles.
Most of these girls, they get moved around and touched around very early on. And, you know, and the people that have control of everything are untouchable.
This name-dropping served multiple purposes. It made him seem more powerful and connected than he actually was. It also created a sense that if he had these kinds of connections, then he must be a good guy. A lot of people see names like DiCaprio and Blanchett in the Epstein files and assume that means there's some kind of verified connection. But when you actually look at the evidence, what you find is that these names appear because Epstein was using them as part of his process. They were tools in his manipulation toolkit. In September 2002, Jeffrey Epstein flew these two actors to Africa on his private Boeing 727. Now, this trip wasn't some secret pleasure trip. It was conducted in conjunction with the Clinton Foundation's early work on the epidemic. This was actually supposed to be humanitarian work. The flight records that were obtained in 2016 and reiterated in the 2024 unsealings confirmed that the group traveled to several locations across the continent. The presence of Spacey and Tucker on the aircraft is verified by pilot-reported manifests. So this isn't rumor, this is documented fact.
You knew Jeffrey Epstein, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. You know, we flew Bill Clinton and a lot of different, that was a humanitarian trip to Africa.
Yeah.
And I met him on that trip because it was his plane. I didn't know who plane we was getting on, but it was a whole bunch of dignitary people who was with a delegation. And yeah, I met him, and you know, you don't know people, what they do in their private lives, so yeah.
Now here's something that adds another layer to this story. The records also indicate that Bill Clinton was accompanied by Secret Service agents for most of this trip. That adds a layer of official oversight to the flight logs. There were actual government personnel present, which means this wasn't some secret underground operation. There was visibility into at least some of what was happening. Chris Tucker's name also appears in Epstein's personal contact book, which establishes a social connection beyond just this one flight. So there was definitely some kind of relationship there, whether it was casual or more involved. Mel Gibson believes Spacey and Tucker were passengers on a flight that happened to be organized by Epstein, and there is a high chance that they both saw illegal or inappropriate stuff during this trip.
But there are accounts from the time where, yes, people did witness these things. And of course, I had a bunch of battery of archaeologists and scientists and professors on my own that say, yeah, well, this stuff did happen, and here's the, you know, the depictions of it in paintings and images, and you know, so it did happen.
Now let's talk about the people who actually made this whole operation run. Leslie Groff, Epstein's longtime personal assistant, is mentioned over 157,000 times in the files. Her role involved scheduling the flights, dinners, and appointments that brought individuals like Naomi Campbell and Bill Gates into Epstein's orbit. Without her, none of this would have been possible. She was the logistical backbone of the entire operation. Then there's Richard Kahn, Epstein's accountant, who appears over 52,000 times in the documents. He documented the financial transfers that funded the Lolita Express and the lavish social events attended by celebrities. This guy was literally keeping the books on everything. And we can't forget about the modeling scouts. Jean-Luc Brunel was a French model scout who allegedly supplied girls to Epstein and his friends. This guy was a key bridge between the modeling world, including figures like Naomi Campbell, and Epstein's residences. Another figure, Peter Listerman, is described in the files as a model matchmaker and was a primary subject of interest for FBI investigators looking into how Epstein recruited young women from Eastern Europe and Russia. What this all reveals is that Epstein's most powerful asset was his ability to associate himself with globally recognized names. This social currency allowed him to evade law enforcement for decades by presenting himself as a global elite.
First, we know that Jeffrey Epstein socialized widely. His network spanned the arts, business, politics, royalty, high society. And so association with him does not equate to wrongdoing. There are images of him with Michael Jackson. He's also photographed with Diana Ross and former President Bill Clinton. He features a lot in this dump of images. His association with Epstein is well known, and he is on record expressing his regret at having ever known him. Clinton is photographed in the files with Kevin Spacey too. There's an image of Mick Jagger with Ghislaine Maxwell.
All right, now that we've gone through all the celebrities and their connections to Epstein, let's take a step back to understand this highly stratified social network with different levels of association and involvement. Think of it like different tiers. We're not just talking about a simple list of names where everyone is equally connected. The evidence shows clear categories of how people fit into Epstein's world. First, there's what we can call the logistic tier. These are the people who are documented passengers on Epstein's aircraft. We're talking about people like Naomi Campbell, Kevin Spacey, and Chris Tucker. These associations were often linked to humanitarian missions or high-level social travel. Naomi Campbell flew on at least 2 specific flights in 2002. Spacey and Tucker were on that Africa trip with the Clinton Foundation. These aren't allegations, these are verified manifest records. This type of connection gave Epstein the ultimate form of social camouflage. He could point to these famous passengers and say, this is just high-level social networking. Then there's the strategic tier. This is represented by people like Bill Gates, whose relationship with Epstein was centered around philanthropy and reputation management. This is a completely different kind of connection. We're not talking about casual social visits. We're talking about actual business discussions, proposed financial arrangements, and attempted collaborations. This tier was characterized by Epstein's attempts to use personal vulnerabilities to force professional cooperation. The alleged extortion attempt involving the Russian bridge player is a perfect example of this. Epstein was trying to leverage personal relationships to get Bill Gates to play along with his fundraising schemes. And finally, there's celebrities like Leonardo DiCaprio and Cate Blanchett, whose presence in the files is really just a byproduct of Epstein's name dropping. Their names were used as grooming tactics to create a false sense of security and prestige for his victims. Their names are in the files because Epstein used them to impress young women. That's a different type of association than someone like Naomi Campbell, who has photographic evidence of being on a yacht with Maxwell and victims.
I've seen what they do. The ritualistic behaviors, the drugging, putting girls in the suitcases, dumping them in alleyways. It's horrifying. And it's all done under the protection of this is going to be paid off. There's another NDA. It's terrible.
Let's step back to understand why people like Mel Gibson, Cat Williams, Jaguar Wright, and so many other whistleblowers are trying to expose folks like Epstein. The thing is, this industry has always been a strange beast. On the surface, it looks glamorous. The red carpets, awards shows, private jets, massive houses. But behind all that glitz and glamour, there's a whole different world operating by its own rules.
The whole point of this, like Cat Williams said when he sat with Shay Shay earlier this year, the whole point of this is for them in a coordinated effort to pretend like none of it is real for the public's perception.
Hollywood operates on this system that you can really only describe as mutual protection. Everyone looks out for everyone else, but only as long as you stay in line. You keep quiet about what's really going on behind the scenes. You play the game, you attend the right parties, you make the right connections, and what do you get? You get fame, you get money, you get access to the best roles, the best deals, the best of everything. The industry rewards silence with everything a person could possibly want, but here's the flip side. The moment you step out of line, the moment you start talking about things you're not supposed to talk about, that's when everything changes. Suddenly, those doors that were always open start closing. The industry doesn't just reject truth tellers, it actively punishes them. We're talking about blacklisting, character assassination, career destruction. This is the machine that Mel Gibson fell against, and it's the same machine that so many others have warned about.
I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like, could it? Mm-hmm. And then you find out later on the track that you are exactly on track. Mm-hmm. With a lot of this stuff, not specifically on track, but that you could, that some of your worst nightmares were real.
Mel Gibson went from being one of the most powerful men in Hollywood to being basically blacklisted from the industry. Because when you look at the timeline, Something doesn't quite add up, and that's where a lot of these theories start to build.
I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
And nobody was really bothering to explain it to me.
It all started back in 2006. He got pulled over in Malibu, and things got ugly. According to sources, that whole incident was actually used as cover to push Mel Gibson out of Hollywood. He knew too much about the darker side of the industry, along with the connections to Jeffrey Epstein and that whole network. And instead of letting him talk, they basically destroyed his career to silence him. But then something happened that really fueled these theories. Mel Gibson became a huge supporter of Sound of Freedom, and that movie about child trafficking became a massive cultural hit. He publicly endorsed it, talked about it on podcasts, and suddenly his name was forever linked to this idea of exposing Hollywood's role in illegal transportation networks. For people who already believed he was silenced for knowing too much, this was basically confirmation. Then came the interviews. He went on Joe Rogan podcast and talked about Hollywood's evil side.
The human sacrifice aspect is alive and well in our society, I think.
It really is. It's just dressed up in a different way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, rhetoric around it. But they've always been able to justify it.
For a lot of these A-listers, the Epstein connection wasn't just some random secret they came across. It was a currency in this whole twisted game of Hollywood politics. You knew something about someone, and they knew something about you. Everyone had their little pieces of dirt on each other, and that's what kept everyone in line. No one was ever going to talk because talking would mean bringing everyone down, including themselves. It was this perfect system of mutual assured destruction, and it kept the whole thing running smoothly for decades. This is where it all comes together. See, Epstein wasn't just some random wealthy guy who liked hanging out with celebrities. He was a bridge. He connected the world of high-gloss entertainment, the world of movies and music and red carpets, to the world of high-level corruption, the world of power and money and influence that operates completely outside the public eye. He was the link between Hollywood and all these other spheres that most people don't even know exist. But what do y'all think about this? Do you buy this whole underground network of Hollywood folks keeping each other's secrets? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more videos like this.